absolutely. So, if you all could introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your time at IC and then also about your fellowship. So, what it was, and maybe a little bit about what you did during that time or what you're doing currently. If anyone wants to start, and then you can popcorn to someone else.
I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Markeisha Morgan. At IC, I majored in legal studies with a minor in communication studies. And I'm currently doing my fellowship with Florida Youth Shine, which works under Florida's Children First. It's a youth advocacy organization dedicated to protecting and serving the rights of at-risk youths within the welfare system. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and yeah, I'm a part of cohort 2. I'll pass it over to Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey. I had a major in sociology and double minor in counseling and Spanish. And I'm currently working with College and Community Fellowship. We work with women who have an involvement with the justice system. So either they were previously convicted or incarcerated, and we help them in the process to getting whatever degree that they want to get. She, her pronouns. And I'll pass to Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Audrey. So my name is Julissa Ramirez. I graduated with a major in sociology and a minor in Latino studies. And I did my fellowship at El Puente Leaders for Peace and Justice, which is a human rights organization that pretty much branches out to different sites. And my site was specifically a community school. And my job specifically was to provide college access readiness work for middle school students.
Can I also ask like where people were based for their...
I was in New York City.
Okay, cool.
You gotta pass it.
I gotta pass it on to Diana.
I'll say really quick, Markeisha is in Florida and Audrey's in New York City.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Diana, and I majored in journalism with minors in Latinx studies and education studies, and I am a community outreach fellow at the nonprofit Unlocal. Unlocal is a nonprofit specifically for undocumented immigrants, and we have two branches, the legal department that works more with helping people get free legal resources for folks on trial, and the community outreach department working with community members for Know Your Rights campaigns and connecting them with different resources around the city. And I am in New York City, and I will pass it to Bree.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I was a Soc major with minors in education and Latinx studies, and I'm currently at On Point for College, which is a nonprofit based in Syracuse, New York, focused on providing students with access to higher education, and but in kind of different facets. Like the majority of our students are non-traditional, so the ages are from 17 to 29, and so the range of it's not just like going to college. Like there's a lot of like certification programs, trades, people that are coming from post-incarceration, or and like there's a lot of like, there's a student that was working with last week that was like 50 and going back to school for their associates. So the stuff kind of like ranges, but yeah. Oh, my bad. I have to pass it. Candace.
Hey y'all. I graduated from Ithaca 2019. I majored in public and community health, concentrations in health, wellness, and politics, so politics of health, wellness, and well-being. I did my fellowship at the Praxis Project in Oakland, California. Which is a movement.
Sorry about that. Claire, I just muted you. There's a bit of feedback coming from your end.
Which is
Sorry, I had to put my laptop in.
Which is a movement intermediary. So we center health justice and racial equity in our work, working with grassroots organizers across the country doing various work on front lines and connecting it to health and building capacity, community-centered empowerment, things like that, and technical assistance training through different programming that we do as an org. I was a health justice fellow, but now I'm currently a program associate doing policy and communications for the organization. And I'm gonna pass it to Laura.
Hey y'all, it's Laura. Also from Cohort 1 and graduated in May 2019 with an environmental studies major and international politics minor. And I'm currently at UPROSE, which is an environmental and climate justice organization here in Brooklyn, where I'm from, another community, but much like mine. And we're a community-based organization, but we do a lot, we're recognized nationally. So we do a lot of different types of work and have a lot of different types of campaigns. And I'm honestly on all of them. And because we're a small staff, we're all on all of them. But yeah, I use she, her pronouns, and that's me. And I'm gonna pass it on to Claire.
Hey, hi everyone. So sorry about the feedback. I worked at Metro Justice in Rochester, New York for my fellowship. So I did that the summer between junior and senior year. Majored in sociology and minored in English and education studies. At Metro Justice, we were doing community organizing work with various bills and campaigns in the area. So a lot of work with the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, working with groups across the state, so doing a lot of lobbying in Albany. Did a lot of work with immigration rights in Rochester as it related to the Greyhound station. So it was really like, you go where you're needed in the moment. So it's a lot of like organizing people and listening to the community and kind of working with groups as it needed help. So we were really a go-between between a lot of politicians and then other community groups. But yeah, now I'm in Colorado. I work for the Colorado Democratic Party until we win big in November, and then I'll figure it out from there.
Thank you all. So again, I posted the questions in the chat and we can go through them unless any of the scholars want to ask a more personal or detailed question to any of our current or past fellows.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few questions. I guess like I have like two main ones, and it's like how much did like the fellowship that you chose like kind of influence like what you were gonna do like once it was over, and also like were you able to like live well and like be provided for with like the money that the fellowship like provides, or did you have to take like a second job or like seek like also other ways to like sustain yourself?
I can start. Can you just repeat the first part of the question? I forgot.
Yeah. How much did like the fellowship that you chose end up like either like determining or like influence whatever you decided to pursue once it was over?
Yeah. I think working with the population I'm working with, it kind of confirmed that I do want to do social work. So I'm going to grad school after, but it also showed me that I do not want to work in nonprofits probably ever again. Just being honest. But the environment isn't really for me. It's not really conducive to how I want to work. And I want to do more so like micro work, so like one-on-one with clients anyway. So, and then the second part of the question, let me see. So I think the salary's sufficient for me in my situation because I'm living at home for free. So it's helpful in that way that it kind of funds everything else that I need to do. But honestly, if I needed to live on my own in New York City, I mapped it out and I wouldn't be able to afford to do that with loans eventually and a potential car payment because I'm trying to look for a car. it wouldn't have been enough. And if it was, I wouldn't have had any extra money to do anything else.
What was the environment actually like? Like, what made you like decide that you didn't want to work in nonprofits?
I mean, maybe I'm grouping all nonprofits together too much. Maybe my experience would be different at a different one, but it's very disorganized. It's very much so like my boss will email me and be like, we have a meeting in 10 minutes. And I have to jump and be like, okay, we have a meeting in 10 minutes.
Right.
So it's just not as organized as I would like it to be. And it's also a lot of hours outside of the 9 to 5. So that's just specific for me because I have to go to all the community meetings and take attendance and whatever that is. But it's just a lot of sporadic hours and it's not really consistent 9 to 5 all the time.
Okay. Thank you.
I can answer. Yeah, so I specifically chose my nonprofit because like the Ithaca's public health program was great. Like I don't really have any hard critiques of it besides the fact that it was super white centered and I wanted to be doing more intentional public health work with community. So I was looking for an organization that was like doing that was working with BIPOC communities. And I think that it prepared it during my fellowship. I realized the type of avenue that I wanted to go down because when I first started, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this fellowship, go to grad school. Like that was the plan. But during that, I realized that I probably could use another year or two of like on the ground experience to aid my graduate education. And B, it kind of like told me that maybe I'm not gonna just get my master's in public health. Like I'm looking more into like a master's in public policy or urban planning with public health incorporated. And so like, I don't think if I did the fellowship, I would have that insight. And it told me that like policy, like even though policy isn't like built for people of color to like do well in, because like you see policies that are just counter active within certain communities, there are ways to utilize the policy system and legislative system to like build power and get what you want. And if I wasn't able to see that framework through working at Praxis, I think I probably would have just like thrown off the idea of like doing any type of legislative or policy work. So I think that's what shaped me, and that's the role that I'm in right now, especially like in California specific policy. So like working with a bunch of coalitions that are doing like progressive work. But yeah, I don't think I would have gotten that if I didn't do that. And for me, because I live in the Bay Area, you just have to budget really hard. I knew there's certain things that I just couldn't have. Like I couldn't have a car. And I negotiated having a transportation stipend from my host organization. And like little things like that, I think you could work out some things to cut cost. And then also I was telling the girls yesterday that I found like there's Facebook group housing places that you can only join if you have X amount of dollars to spend per month. And it's like, the one here is called Housing for OK People. And I think they're just like, OK is for Oakland. Yeah, but yeah, like you have to meet a certain financial income and it's other people that are willing to take you in for that fixed amount. And so like, don't live beyond your means. And the other thing is like, I don't think this fellowship is meant for you to save money. So having that mindset too. Hannah talked about that yesterday, is like really important. Like you're not going to save, you will spend all of that money. So if you want to save, I would suggest like getting a second job and utilizing that for savings, but this money will be spent.
I would say, right from the get-go, for anyone who's considering fellowships, you have to consider the fact that 25% of it you need to save to be able to pay your taxes. A standard rule of thumb is that you should try to find housing that's no more than 30% of your salary. So for a fellowship salary of $40,000, 30% of that is $12,000. So if you can find, housing, whether that's like rent, whatever, um, plus utilities for under $1,000 would be the suggested amount. Obviously, it's a case by case situation and what you're able to find. But if you take that 30% and 25%, that's already 55% of your budget. And so taking the rest of that 55% and thinking like, can I meet all of my needs? Is this enough for food, any bills that you have? Think like cell phone, etc. If you have student loans, those will typically go into repayment 6 months after you graduate. So how much is that going to be? If you do an income-based repayment plan, you should be on the lower end for what your monthly payments will be. And I don't know if any of you want to talk about student loans a little bit. But your income will be based on, so for example, if you start a fellowship in, say, June of 2021, by December, when your loans go into repayment, they'll take your whole income for 2021, and you only have been paid for 6 months. So your income will be pretty low for 2021. So again, if anybody wants to talk about student loans repayment and what that was like, but it should be pretty low. Other bills that you have, if you need to secure health insurance, again, depending on what state you're in, you might also, because of having a low income, qualify for Medicaid at no cost, but that's case by case as well. So I would strongly suggest putting together a budget, and even now starting to preemptively look at housing and rent and what you might be able to afford in terms of considering a geographic area. But I think what Candace said and what Hannah talked about last night too, advice that I gave her, if you want to do this fellowship, it's not a year that you're going to be saving money. And you have to decide if that's the right thing for you, and it might not be, and that's okay. But if you want that experience and that resume building thing, whether for grad school or for your next step in your career, and you can be okay with the salary and just know that it's not the year that you're going to save money, you just have to think about what's best for your personal situation. Does anybody want to talk about student loans?
I haven't started paying them yet, so I don't really have much to say, but I will say that you can call ahead of time to know what your payment will be when it does go into repayment, so you can plan around that. So that's what I did.
I haven't started paying them yet either, of course, but I think Kelly mentioned this yesterday, and I just started doing it like a month ago. But I use Google Spreadsheets now to budget, and it's a little different because I'm not on the fellowship salary right now. I was able to save since I did a summer fellowship, just because it's so quick, and so I was able to save money for housing from my income during the school year, and so then everything else was kind of going to savings and groceries and things. So that was really helpful. But I definitely recommend for post-college, a spreadsheet. I really didn't want to do it initially because I was really annoyed, but there are features in Google Spreadsheets where you can like mine takes my whole salary and it'll break it into 25 for savings, 25 for wants, and then 50% for needs. And then all of those are broken into percentages, and it'll factor it out. So it'll show me how much I have left over each month. And I have pockets for babysitting and the days I work overtime, which if you want to work on a campaign, you'll be working overtime for the majority of your hours. And so then you just kind of factor that all in. I highly recommend it because I'm able to see where the money is going to come from when I start paying loans.
I think some people yesterday too suggested creating usually within banks, you're able to set up as many separate accounts as you want. So, a separate savings account or a separate checking account, and just divert, that 25% into savings that you're going to have to save for taxes. And don't forget that your taxes will be paid over 2 years. So I think it's, anywhere between, we say 25%, but it seems like maybe you actually pay closer to 19 or 20%. But just to have that buffer, That'll be split between 2 years. But to put that aside and just keep it and don't touch it, and you could do the same, creating a separate checking account for your budget as well. So anything you need for like rent, utilities, other bills that you have, that way you put that money aside to start and you don't touch it, and then anything left is, entertainment or discretionary funds. For student loans, I can share that, I did income-based repayment, and I only have been paying for 3 years. So not all that long ago, I started paying my own student loans. But my first year, I started at IC in the summer as well. So kind of a similar timeline to what you all, and a similar salary as well for what you all will be getting for the internships. Obviously, it's different. I was housed as an RD for free. So there's that different aspect. But a similar salary, which is what's taken into account for the income-based repayment plan. And my loan payments for the first several months after January, for like the first 6 months, were actually $0. So they decided based on that salary and the payment plan that I chose for my loans that I had to pay $0. So again, just something to think about, and contact your loan servicer for any questions you have.
I have been paying on my loans since January. And I was privileged enough that I only had like one loan for one semester. So I'm in a different place than probably some other people on the call when it comes to monthly repayments. So I was able to pay more onto my loans, more into the principal and interest than other folks. But I would suggest, when you go into, if it's a federal loan, you will go in and you'll fill out a sheet putting in like all of your monthly allocations, how much debt you have on other things, like I have a credit card, stuff like that. And they factor in and kind of come up with an estimated amount that you should pay. And then I would suggest taking that payment and breaking it into 2 each month, or adding an additional amount to it if you're able to kind of knock it out. But yeah, I would like to hear from Julia and Laura, because I know their experience is a little bit different.
Also, did people I know Candace, like you said, you were able to negotiate like a transportation stipend, were people able to I don't know, did the org provide any sort of aid on top of what you were already getting paid for the fellowship?
Yeah, I just mainly had transportation. If I didn't have healthcare under my mom's coverage, I think they probably would have negotiated getting me healthcare. Diana had some really good points about looking at their employer handbook to see the benefits that they offer, and trying to see if you are eligible for any of those.
Yeah, I can touch a little bit more about that. So once it was in the later phase of the fellowship negotiations, I asked for the employee handbook, and I went through it with Sam, and I saw that folks had gotten $300 for professional development for the year, and then $30 of self-care funds, which can be used for therapy, for art classes. They're really good about it being very open. And I asked if I would qualify for those as a fellow for the year, and they said yes. So I think if you don't ask, you don't get. The worst they could say is no. So yeah, I would definitely look through their handbook and see what they offer their general employees, and worst case scenario, they say no.
Thank you.
I really like that idea, Diana, because in my case, I could have asked for money. I knew that my nonprofit did not have any budget for any of that. The fact that I was able to come in and be paid from somewhere else was a blessing to them. And so they didn't have much to give me. And I say that to also say that it's important to have that handbook and all the information that other employees that aren't fellows have there, because in my case, I was taken advantage of and not given those certain materials so that I wouldn't know. So yeah, definitely take note of those things and ask.
In my case, it wasn't necessarily financial, but I would say kind of to the same token as Laura, when I was going through, time off and like holidays and vacations, because that's not necessarily something that's like built into the fellowship in and of itself. But On Point has a super weird thing, whereas like I don't even know off the top of my head, but it's like every 5 days you work, you get like a half day personal or something like that. And so I don't know, it's some weird like algebra equation. But like by this time already, I've gotten like a week off, and had I not asked or been aware of that, like I wouldn't know, and I would just be working for no reason. So
Mm.
I think it's important also to check ahead of time. Like, I think I had a similar situation to Laura for like a shorter period of time, in the sense that my organization turned out to be in like financial deficit and debt. And so they only had 3 full staff employees and then like 4 interns. And so it was really easy for them to throw work on us. And also I witnessed what it looks like to be deeply stressed in the midst of trying to keep your nonprofit afloat. And they managed to do it, and they did a good job, but they just weren't like, it was an amazing internship and I don't regret it, but they definitely were in a weird place to try and work with interns, because they were trying to take care of their own finances. Like, the only thing I felt comfortable asking them for was coffee in the office. So I recommend just doing a little bit of research ahead of time on your organization, because they can look really good on paper and they can present themselves and say, we can't wait to have you. And then by the time you get there in the summer, they're like, oh, by the way, we owe like X amount of money and we need you to do this work. So I just recommend looking into it ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I 1000% agree. Now thinking back to it, now that I completely finished my fellowship, I wish I would have done that. To go off of what Laura said, I do feel like my time was also taken advantage of, and sometimes it would even feel like a burden on me to even ask for a day off, or like my own mental health days. But I'm sure other employees who were actually hired there probably had the space to do that, because they had that book or that manual. They've done their research, and I completely did it. So I would definitely 100% recommend to do that.
Other questions?
I mean, I have a lot of questions. I don't know if other people want to ask, but I can keep going.
Go ahead.
Okay. Did you feel like you, like while you were doing your fellowship, you also had like the time and like the capacity to like, I guess just like enjoy like the things that you'd like, and like spend time with people? Like, yeah, how big of like, I don't know, were you able to also like just carve out like time for yourself to like be a person like in your life?
So no, I had no time.
Okay.
So it was different for me because I worked at my organization for the first 3 months of this year when outside was open and
Right.
I could go into the office. And so that was a blessing for me because I was able to like truly meet everybody and get accustomed to how the organization works and then go remote. But my schedule is from 10 to 6, but there was times in the first few months that I was there until from 10 to 10. Sometimes I was asked to come in early, and they would use me 24 hours a day, every day of the week if they could. But I really had to set boundaries, and I'm really happy that I did that in the first few months that I was there. It's something that towards the end or the middle you can't really do anymore without like, suspicion from your boss or other people in your organization, depending on how your work environment is. And so setting boundaries is really important. I would say that usually your boss would give you like their expectations of you as a fellow, and if they don't, you should ask them what their expectations of you are, and you should also give them your expectations of how you like to work in anywhere. So that's really important to ask for and do, I would say, in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it goes back to creating boundaries from the jump. So part of, I believe our contract says our hours. I think I included like my hours since I spoke to my supervisor about, you know, what my schedule would look like. So it was already like written on paper that I work like 9 to 4, 9 to 6, depending on the day. And making sure that I log off at those times. Like I don't check my email past 5. Like my computer is shut, I am off, I am unlogged, and I won't answer just because, like, we are off. So creating that boundary for yourself. And I think it's easy to feel like this task is important to finish today, but it will be there tomorrow. So, yeah.
I think location is really important too in factoring leisure time and whether or not you're going to experience that. I took a huge leap of faith by moving across the country, but I knew that I wanted to experience a different location. And I mean, it came with other ways that like I was moving away from home. I didn't have like a close network of family or friends. Like everyone was like 3,000 miles away, but thankfully I had like a godmother that doesn't live too far away. So I was like, for holidays where I couldn't fly back home, like I was able to spend time with her. But I really did utilize a lot of like my free time, or because we work with a lot of organizers across the state and across the country. When it wasn't COVID, we were traveling a lot. And so like this time last year, I was in like Standing Rock, North Dakota. And so I was able, like when we did do those longer trips, like I would book my flights a little bit differently so that I could have like a weekend just like spending time in different locations that I've never been before. And like traveling across California, like same thing, like whenever we went to LA, I would say, and it was like closer to a weekend, I would ask my boss if it was okay if I booked my flight on a Sunday night so that I can like experience other places or things like that. But obviously you have to weigh your options about location. Like like if I didn't have a car, if I had a car, I could be able to go on like longer trips places, but like if I was in a location where it's more rural and there's nothing around me, I would be stuck. And so I think location definitely is a big factor when you're deciding like your finances and everything. Like, are you willing to make certain sacrifices, like not having close friends or family nearby? And like I was, and so I've spent a lot of time by myself, but it's been great. Like, and I have made a few friends. It takes a while. Like, I'm not even going to like front, like it takes forever, especially when you're an adult, because you're not in the same academic situations where it's like, oh, like these are my homies from class, like, like we'll go hang out on Thursday night or whatever. Like it's very different because everyone's an adult and has a 9 to 5 and like their own hobbies and stuff. So it's really like I've made friends at Trader Joe's. Like I've like really had to like put myself out there and just like, it's kind of scary, but if you're willing to do it, I say do it.
Also, in my organization, the work that we do takes a toll on all of us. I mean, we're literally negotiating for people's lives every day. And so it's why a lot of us end up working longer hours, because we care so much about the work that we do. And we know that we have a grand impact. But it was something that I needed to bring about the conversation early on, that we should all be taking care of ourselves and in a way together. And so we started incorporating like healing justice series within work hours. So it's not always like, oh, I work really, really hard and I got to take care of myself. And so it's not that like cycle like that. And so we started a book club so that we can get our minds off of it. And so that happened. You can also like, you can bring that into your organization if it doesn't exist already, or at least bring it up. So you tried. And so that's something that we started doing at Uprose that truly helped all of us.
I would strongly recommend that if your organization doesn't have that, you can pitch for it, because my org did do that. We called it a sacred circle. And so we would occasionally have our sacred circles, and it was just our time to just unwind, reflect, and like how can we as an organization help each other, especially through the pandemic. We did that a lot more during the pandemic, during the school year, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, how are we going to take care of our students? So yeah, if your work is draining you somehow, as an org, figure out what we can do together to make things better. Times are hard.
As far as like time management and time, I think maybe it was Laura who initially brought it up, but that was something else that I put. It was already included in the OnPoint contract, but flex scheduling, because they have a lot of like random events. Like there'll be like some resume clinic or something for students at 10 a.m. that like you're gonna have to like help with, or at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, like random stuff like that. But my schedule's from 9 to 5, so if I have to go to an event and it's going to be from 7 to 9 or something, I'm going to like take 2 hours off on Friday or something like that. I don't know, just a recommendation if you want to like have a discussion with your like supervisor or whoever like you're working out your fellowship with, to like include that in your contract, just because I feel like there's so many of those like random events, and that could easily like add up to like you working 10 extra hours one month and you're not getting paid anything additional for it. So just to like recoup your time.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bree. So like for most of these nonprofits, like as Bree said, they do like require a lot out of you. And so sometimes you'll find yourself working on weekends too. So if you could find a way to negotiate, like if you work this weekend, maybe taking Monday and Tuesday off. So that's definitely something to like work around adding it into your fellowship agreement.
Also wanted to include that Candace mentioned something yesterday that I think was really important, that you have to be really cordial and professional about how you go about everything, about the way you negotiate for stuff, because I think that you really don't want to burn any bridges, because of course the nonprofit can give you the opportunity to work there after, or can point you to people that you want to meet wherever you want to go next. And so you truly want to think about the way you go about all the things that you're not necessarily changing. I think it's more like my nonprofit, where a lot of times the employees there, we felt like we were walking on eggshells with our boss or with our supervisors. So you truly want to, especially at nonprofits, I don't know what everyone else experience was, but for me, like we became a family really, really quickly. And so when you cross that line of professional and like friendliness, friendship, and you going out to get drinks with them after and stuff like that, it can get a bit awkward. So my rule of thumb is like I just put everything in writing, because it's like I said it, you can't say I said it, or you can't, that type of thing, and just keep following up, because that was one thing with my organization. Even applying to my organization, something that helped me, because I know that a lot of organizations, a lot of nonprofits, you will find that they will not email you back, or it's very, very hard to get in contact with them because they have a million campaigns or whatever they're doing, or they're short staffed. And something that I did to get Uprose's attention was I wrote them a letter, other than the emails that I sent them, explaining why I wanted to work with them. And I was like, this is all my passion. This is exactly why I want to work here. Like, I'm not here to extract. I'm here to give. And immediately they responded to that email. Every other email that I was like, hi, I am a fellow, or I'm like a potential fellow for your organization. It was just like, or I think organization was just like, I don't know what that is. I don't even have time to figure it out type thing. And so I called a lot of organizations, and that truly helped, because email, they get emails on a daily basis that they don't even get to. So you truly have to stand out, especially if it's like your number one choice. So.
Yeah, I would definitely, so like I said this yesterday, and I'll just kind of say it again, but you show up to the fellowship the way that you will get treated. So if you show up being like, yeah, I'm just a fellow getting paid by somebody else, like I'm not gonna show up, like, you know, like giving it half-assed, you're gonna get a half-assed experience. I think if you treat it like like they pay you, treat it like they pay you, and treat it like it's actually your job, and they will respect you for that. And when it comes to like professionalism, because I really hate that, like I hate the idea of professionalism, but like professionalism, but not like showing up looking tidy and just like pleasing everyone, but professionalism being like, I'm not going to be walked on. Like I have my set boundaries. Like this is how you're going to respect me as an employee. This is the type of relationship that I want with my supervisor, supervisee type of thing. And that's what you need to show up with, not with like the perfect outfit and like your hair is like groomed and straight, like not that. Right. And then to Laura's point about if it's your first choice, well, with your initial email, I would just say customize it, like customize it to a T. Add everything that you've done, add how your passions lean into and lean into the work that they're doing. If their mission happens to align with what you majored in, great. If it doesn't, like lean into other things that you know you have credibility in, and like utilize that to like sell yourself to the organization for a little bit, for that time being. And yeah, add your LinkedIn, add your social media, add your Twitter if it's professional, you know, like let them see who you, I know yours isn't Danny, but let them see let them see who you are so they can get a sense of like the type of person that they're going to be getting on the job. So yeah.
Okay, well, I can keep going. I feel like this is kind of similar to what I asked earlier, but like, yeah, like how much did like your fellowship kind of set you up for like what you like are gonna do next or are doing like after? Like, did you have to like go through like a whole like other process of like finding jobs and stuff, or like even like relocating, or like, yeah, how was like the transition post fellowship versus like post college grad? For, I guess, for those that already like did it.
For me, I would say that it really solidified what exactly I want to do post grad. I did say that I wanted to do higher education as like my ultimate career choice, but I guess I more so want to go into just education administration overall, whether it's on a college campus, elementary school, high school, middle school, whatever it is. I do know it did teach me that I don't want to teach, but more so be on the administrative sector where, you know, like I'm sitting with people making the decisions as opposed to teaching, right? And the reason I say that is because I had the opportunity of having a pretty close relationship with my supervisor, who was the assistant director of the community school. So she would sit on multiple meetings with the principal and the assistant principal and the dean of the school, and she would tag me along with her because she knew exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to be on that side of the education system eventually. So I would sit on those meetings all the time, and I was able to take notes and really learn about what it is to be on the administrative side. And that position really solidified that for me. It was more so like, okay, this is really what you want to do. And it has made, not that it made my job searching now a little easier because I still am unemployed, but it made me look for specific things as opposed to just general positions, right? So yeah, not sure if that answers your question, but yeah.
No, it does, yeah.
And I do know that I want to get my master's eventually, but now a little bit more so along the lines of what exactly it is.
Right.
And if you realize that, like, I said this yesterday too, but like, don't stress out in the first 3 months about what you're going to be doing a year from now. Like, don't start your fellowship and being like, okay, I have to apply for grad school right now. I need to go start looking for jobs right now. I need to figure out where I'm relocating in a year because I hate this place or whatever. Like, unless you really do hate it. But I would say if you know you're not interested in staying or negotiating some type of full-time employment with your organization, I wouldn't start the job search until about 3 months out to the end of your fellowship. I would start kind of those longer term conversations with your supervisor or executive director, depending on who you kind of talk to, at about 6 months. So like, do you see a future do you see me in the future of this organization? And if so, what does that look like? And hear their pitch. And if that's not the position that you want to be fitted into or continue doing with the org, I would, start looking, but also utilize the relationships that you've built with the people that you've been working with for the last year. So like at the 6 month point for me, like if my supervisor wasn't like, hey, Candace, I want to talk to you about you staying here, I was already thinking about all the coalitions and coalition meetings that I was sitting on and all those great, fantastic organizations that are already a part of my network that I've already had touch points with that know my name. And if I sent them an inquiry about positions, they wouldn't be like, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
So utilize the connections that you are going to make, because I feel like if you're going to be with an organization organizations always have organization friends. So
Cool.
Utilize the friendships, and like Julie was saying, like ask for professional development. Like I would go with my boss on like stuff that had nothing to do with my day-to-day, but he would just be like, I like that you're curious, I like that you're asking, so like, yeah, come with me to this random meeting. And I would just sit there and take notes and glean and learn, because sometimes it was like, oh, that person who said something in that meeting was interesting, how can I get connected to them? And like ask for meetings with folks, and don't be afraid to reach out.
I'll just add a little bit. Several people have been able to get professional development stipends as part of their negotiating and what benefits might be offered, even if they don't have funding though for to attend a conference or something like that. Because it's a fellowship, I have seen that supervisors are generally more interested in like getting you other experiences and networking and connections, because a little bit different than if they were paying you and might want you to stay and not like leave the organization. With a fellowship, they know that there's an end date unless they offer you a position at the end of that. So I've seen them to be like way more willing to connect you with other contacts that they might have. Several people, I can think of like Hannah as an example. I think she probably met like every music teacher in the Washington, D.C. area.
Wow.
Because she worked really hard with her supervisor to meet as many people and connections as she could. So have those conversations early, even in like the planning phases about what you hope to get out of this, and ask if they're willing to set up, informal informational interviews with contacts that they have.
And Diana made a great point yesterday. She said that when she's in meetings or whatever, when she's doing what she does in her organization, she started taking a list of the orgs that they partner with people that she heard from, so that later that's your network. That's who you're gonna reach out to. And I started doing the same thing with other organizations. And like Candace was saying, most nonprofits are a part of a coalition of other nonprofits just like yours, like Uprose. We're a part of the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance. We're a part of the Climate Justice Alliance. And there's hundreds of organizations nationally that are at my exposure, that they're right there, so that I know about them. And so in terms of plans after your fellowship, like I started taking notes of the ones that I favored. And also in terms of professional development, like it's really about, like what Ken's saying, if you ask, if they have budget for it, you could probably be a part of it. Like just 2 weeks ago, I was a part of a story-based strategy training, and they gave me a $30 stipend for lunch. Like, so you gotta ask.
Yeah, and like I got training on I did like a week-long training on popular ed, and like that was like
with the popular education program.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so like I was able to kind of like, that was a foundation built into the organization. So again, like ask like every employee of my org had to be trained in popular ed. So like as a fellow, they're like, oh, we need you to do the same thing. So kind of ask those questions, like what types of trainings do you offer to your employees? What type of professional development things do you give your exposure to? Are there conferences each year that all of your employees go to? Am I able to be a part of that too? Like ask for that. Because honestly, if I didn't do the popular ed training, I don't think I would have the right framing for the type of work that I would be doing later on. So yeah, and if they don't offer it, like ask for it, be like, hey, I think this would give me really great framing for the program that you guys are telling me that I'm going to be running. And so like leverage that type of work.
Yeah, similar. Even though it was like a summer internship, my internship was ending, and they had like a climate justice conference actually in New York City or near there, and I asked to go, and like they end up paying for it. And so it's important to like advocate. And I will say like, I'm still in contact with a lot of the organizations and people that I worked with, even though I decided to go a completely different direction and decided to see where like with community organizing, I wanted to see where the organizing skills folded into politics, because it's definitely different, and I think it's important to understand it to be able to do the work in multiple spaces. But I'm still in contact with those nonprofits, and those connections are still there. And even today, I talk about Metro Justice and like BOLD all the time to my volunteers. And I was telling Sam last night, I actually had a volunteer the other day offer to write me a job recommendation, and then another say that he had like a lead on a nonprofit, I think in like somewhere in South America, doing like sex trafficking work, which is what I researched. So like advocate for yourself, talk about what you do, and like talk about BOLD, talk about like whatever organization you work at, because it's really gonna come in handy. Like people will hear that, and it speaks a lot. Like people hear about BOLD, and like in Colorado, there's no BOLD program here. People don't know about it, but people always like comment on it, and they want to know more. And they're like, oh, that sounds like you're a great candidate for this. So talk about yourself, sell yourself, because what you're doing here is big, and it matters a lot.
I actually have to go because I have a 1 p.m. class.
We have that. Well, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, if anybody has to head out, that's okay. This is being recorded, so no worries if you have to head out. I'll share the recording afterwards. But yeah, Leslie, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know if this question was answered already, but I'm just gonna. So did you any of you guys struggle between like applying for a fellowship or like applying to grad school? Because I feel like right now I'm like I'm definitely gonna apply to grad school. I think I'm just gonna go straight in. But like, was that ever like a challenge? Like, oh, I don't know what to do, or like, did you just always want to go like straight into a fellowship?
I think I did have that battle, just because the fellowship wasn't guaranteed at the time, so I wasn't sure if I should jump into something that wasn't guaranteed or something that I knew I was gonna do. I forgot what I was gonna say. I got distracted. But the way I decided was I didn't know exactly what program I wanted to do, so the fellowship was a good out for me to take a gap year and still be productive. So that's how I decided.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for doing this. Again, those of you who participated last night too. I think these will be really incredible resources for years to come, but we'll continue to invite you all every year. And, the more stories and experiences we can share, that's great. Again, as a reminder to please check out the BOLD database to update your own information or to reach out to any of our alum of the program to ask questions that you have. And certainly reach out to me if anybody needs anything or has questions. It was great to see you all again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and this week, and hope to see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.